Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jar.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're taking a little step back and reflect on a big question that something that a lot of people have said, that a government is a reflection of the society. If the government is corrupt, meaning the society is corrupt. If the government is considered incompetent, the society is incompetent. If the government is effective, then it comes from an effective society. All these things the book people are throwing around, we're going to delve into it. But before we start, we're going to be looking at actually what is the role of government? How do we know that this government is responsible? What are some of the indicators that tell us that this is an effective government responding to the needs of the people? And if we talk about that, then we look at our own government. If we agree that government is the reflection of the people, let's examine our own government and see how it reflects our society. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Joining me to discuss this very important topic is our governance and planning consultant, Mr. Ahmed Salif. Mr. Salif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always a pleasure. Let's do it.
Thank you. Also want to welcome for the first time Mr. Lawrence Zagba. Lawrence is joining us for the first time on Focus on Liberia, and also on Tough Talking Thursday. Lawrence, welcome. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, a very pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And Lawrence, as a tradition, being the first time, I want to extend you a bottle of cold water to say welcome, feel at home. This is Tough Talking Thursday. We talk tough here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And viewers, want to welcome all of you across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday. And the question we're going to be looking at is a government is a reflection of the society, true or false? And the case of Liberia will be our case study. So let me start with Mr. Ahmed Salif. And just in a broader sense, I want to say, what do you feel about this topic? Because this is something that we hear all the time, and how does it apply to us? First of all, what does it mean when we say a government is a reflection of society?
Thank you again, Dennis. I'm happy to be here, and Lawrence, it's a pleasure to be on with you. And I'd like to say hello to all of our viewers out there and listeners. It seems rather very simplistic and a no-brainer. One would say, why would you ask such a question if the government is a reflection of the people of the society? Because the government comprises citizens of the very society, of the very country. And so the government is a set of people, it's an institution, and these institutions, although if you want to be more academic about it, I mean, government, you can define it in all kinds of other ways, in institutions, practices, set of tenets, and so forth and so on. But in this particular context, the way you've asked this question is really, the question of, does society present in a representative democracy, in a liberal democracy? Because we like to say in Liberia, we are parting over the United States, we're practicing liberal democracy. And in America, that's how we call it here, it's liberal democracy. That means the institutions are free, the institutions are inclusive, there's equal opportunities for all to participate, people's rights are conferred to them, people's rights are protected, and their laws, like the Constitution and the laws are respected. There's what's called rule of law. For instance, you can go to court and you can expect that you'll receive justice if you have an effective counsel. So these are the characteristics of a free society. So then the question is, in a representative democracy, do we have the best people representing us? Because everybody, all 5 million Liberians or whatever the population is, can't go to the Capitol building, can't go to the executive mansion to represent us. That's why it's called a representative democracy. So you go to the poll and elect, ideally, one of the best amongst you all to serve you, to be there to speak for you, to ensure that the well-being of the people are met. And that's just the presidency. At the legislature, that the people will elect their own representative because they themselves can't leave from Bapulu, Bomi, Nimba, Granjira, wherever, to come to the capital to speak for themselves. And therefore, they need someone from amongst them, once again, some of the best of their sons and daughters to represent them at the capital. So yes, a government is a reflection of the people because the people decide, among all of us here on this FOL panel, we're going to pick Lawrence Zakpa to represent us. We're going to pick Mohamed Sharif to represent us because we believe they're competent, they're able, they're immune, they have minds that, will just look out for the best of this panel. That's kind of the concept. That's the question you're asking. So in terms of how it relates to Liberia, yes, it's the same thing. Is the government a reflection of the society? Now, I posted a similar thing on my social media page when I said a country is as good as its people. And some of the scholars and experts came and jumped in and said, look, no, there are theorists out there that say every society has outliers. You have good outliers, you have bad outliers. In a bad society, you can have few good people. And that's what Rasto said, right? You have few good people who come in and make changes, bring about fundamental changes that people have never seen. They're not used to. Against all the odds, these good people still follow the well principle. They have integrity, they have honor, and they stand up against all odds and ensure that the right things are done at all times. Those are the outliers. And then you have some other societies that are very happy and good societies, right? And
we're going to get in the meat.
Some few bad people. Let me finish the second part of the outliers. Then you have a good society, and then some few bad people come out to really turn the society up on its head, and they show the ugliness of that society, the ugly belly of that society. So yes, indeed, a government is a reflection of the society because it's composed of citizens and members of society.
Wow, Mohamed, welcome. You are welcome to the show. Let me start with you, Mohamed. Before we even get into the meat of the discussion, we said the government is a reflection of the society, true or false, and we're going to use but what really is the role of government? What should government be doing?
Thank you very much, Dennis. I never liked true or false questions when I was in high school and up to college and up to this day, even in my professional career. I don't like true or false, but it's really hard to follow my brother Ahmed, who has laid it out from what I heard from the excerpt that I was able to catch. And so, yes, Professor Dunn, the great Herbert Dunn, said every government, every people get the government they deserve. There was a time that Mr. Samuel K. Doe came visit at the University of Liberia, and the students at that time, as militant as we were, there were thousands of students. Yes, Albert Dunn, not Elwood Dunn, Albert Dunn. Albert was a brother. Albert was I believe, killed by the MPFL during the incursion on Monrovia. And so he said that every people get the government they deserve. On this one visit, that was, very that reflect what Professor Dunn has said, was you saw thousands of students at the University of Liberia, the consciousness of the Liberian society just jumping up and down. We want Doe. This was a far cry from the days of the freedom fighters, the real freedom fighters, the real progressives, who brought about some of the changes that we see now in the Liberian society, some of the political political and social changes. So we, a lot of us were stunned by this, and Don say yes. I mean, people, you guys, what you're doing now, and mind you, he was a professor at the executive mansion. So Don not only taught at the university campus, but he taught Samuel Doe at the executive mansion. He said, "You're going to look back one day at this on this day, so don't blame anyone when you see things going in some other direction because of what you've done in 1980 and because of what you're doing now. So this is a reflection. You want this government, this is what you're going to get." So Dennis, the role of government, right? So I want to first take a look at the role of government. What is the role of government? There are a variety of roles for a government. But one that quickly comes to mind is the government must be a defender and a protector of the governed, of those who they serve. A government must protect its sovereignty, its sovereign territory, and inhabitants within that sovereign territory, within the confines of the rule of law and the administration of justice. Government is a compact between the government and the governed. And so anytime the government fails to live up to its share of the compact, the people have the right in a democratic environment to peaceably alter that government. And usually this is at the ballot box, right? That's what we always say. It has to be at the ballot box, otherwise there'll be chaos. But the problem with Liberia is that the ballot box is very far away from us. I mean, we take 9 years to elect, to turn over a senator, right? So if God forbid you elect a bad senator, you're going to live for that senator for 9 years, and they can do nothing, as a lot of them are doing right now. So forget the executive for a minute. We tend to focus a lot on the executive, and we should. But let's look at it. Let's look at the legislators, right? Who are the first branch of government? So you elect a senator, and the senator stays there for nine years. Why is that? The meat of it. You say we're going to get to the meat, but I think we're already in the meat of this discussion. From what I heard from Ahmed, we're already in it. So we might as well go for it, right? So Dennis, the problem is that you have, and I'm sure you're gonna be asking those questions. How did we get here? All of those things, you look at what happened in 1984, you have scholars, you have distinguished scholars, you have individuals who were the consciousness of the Liberian society, who were all a part of the Constitution drafting committee to draft a new constitution for Liberia. And what is this the best that they could come up with? That 6 years and 9 years and etc. So the first place you have to look sometimes is the frequency of election. So it's underestimated, but it is an important part of democracy. So when people are not held accountable, when people think that they can live on Capitol Hill for 9 years, they can stay there, it's almost their home. And then the next election, God forbid, they get elected 18 years. 18 years is the lifetime of a child who will be born today and finish high school and get prepared for college in the United States. That's how long 18 years is. And that is the thing, that is something that we take for granted. So let's start there. Those are the kind of things that I look at. And they may be intangibles to others, but they are not intangibles to me. So there's a whole host of different factors that I would like to look at, during the course of this deliberation.
Thank you. Let me go to Lawrence. Lawrence, a lot of things have been happening in our country. We have spoken about these all the time. Tonight, we decided to take a step back and say, wait a minute, with all these things going on, do we have a government that we deserve? Is government a reflection of its people? And then we take it from there. So after we have answered that question, and then we're going to go into how it relates to Liberia. So let me get your take on this question. is the government a reflection of its people in the case of Liberia?
Mr. Salif just made a point that's really true, especially when you talk about a representative government. The government, to my opinion, I understand why there are outliers. I would choose to argue the affirmative to say that the government actually is a reflection of the society for several reasons. First is the government is part of that society. Okay, it's chosen from that society. There were people that went to the ballot box and voted for that government to be in place. And the reason why the representative government exists is because majority of the people have elected that particular government. And so if majority of the people elects the government, then the government is actually, yes, the government is a reflection of that society. Now, look at it from another perspective. We elect government mostly because most people elect government along party lines, okay? And the government or officials in the government understand why, who, and how the people selected them. So now they feel that they are bound now to align everything they do to what the people that selected them want them to do. So everything the government does, or maybe mostly everything the government officials want to do, is aligned with the party that elected them. So the government is a part of the society. The government is a reflection of that society. But the problem, the place where I think that we kind of get a little bit short-sightedness is when we elect people to represent us, we expect them to represent us and us only. We expect them to represent the party. We from this party elected you because we want you to do this, and we neglect to realize that at least a little less than half of the population did not vote for that person, but they also expect that person to represent them because they are part of that society. So yes, the government or the elected officials represent the people, but they don't just represent the people. They not just reflect the people who voted for them, but they're supposed to reflect the entire society, even those who did not even vote for them.
And Lawrence, if I may add that, does it depend though how these people come to power? Let's say, if we say the people are or the government is a representative or a reflection of the society, it means they should come to power through a free, fair, and transparent election.
That's
right?
correct.
So
That's correct. That's why they are representative, because they were elected. Now, if you force yourself in power, then you may not reflect upon the society because you were not elected by majority of the society. But then again, there are outliers everywhere. So wherever you go, you can argue it either way, because some people come in power from that society, they were not elected, but they still reflect the mindset of the society. So that's a whole new ball game when you're talking about mindset and everything that has to do with society. But once they are elected democratically, they represent the entire society. Majority of the people voted for them to represent that society. But somebody can come from outside of the society, outside of the culture, and they can still force themselves in power. Then in that instant, they do not represent the society. That's my opinion. That's how I see it.
And Ahmed, let me go to you here. Even if people will come and force themselves to be president, like in the way, 1980, or other areas where people come and force their will on the people, these people that force their way on the people now also are from the same society. So it means we have a violent society. Don't you agree?
Well, it's still a reflection of the society. The question is, how did the people get to forcing themselves on the society, right? There was a force. There was something that was happening. These people had grievances, and there was a government that they were a part of. Was that government a true reflection of the whole of our country in Liberia? That's a question that historians are still dealing with. Now, the people who forced themselves, these were soldiers who have been serving, a lot of them, as personal security for government officials of the day at that time. And they had grievances. They also saw their fellow compatriots because let's step back. See, to answer that question, you need to understand the role of government. Government needs to open up, create up economic opportunity, create enabling environment, economic growth, the social compact Mohamed talked about, right? Between the government and the governed. That is basic services, a good health system, good education system, a happy society, a society that's prosperous, economically prosperous, culturally prosperous, a society that can look at themselves and say, we're doing well. How we're doing well, these are the people in the driver's seat. These are the ones that we've elected to represent us. And if those weren't doing that, and they see that the government wasn't doing that, and majority of the people are suffering, then those who force themselves, they're watching and seeing that, and they're listening to these people they're serving as security to, and so they impose themselves on the people. Now, are you asking, what are those people still reflected in society? I would say yes. They may not have reflected the will of the society at that time, because to attain the will of the society is through a democratic process, free, fair election that's open to all, through a competitive, democratic process, the exercise of democratic tenets and institutions. Those didn't happen. The processes didn't happen, and therefore it wasn't a reflection of the free will of the people, but the elements who took over the government were a reflection of the society themselves. Now, once you force your will and get there, now you are in power. What do you do with that power is what will help us now to try to understand whether they truly then reflected the will of the people.
You're muted, Dennis.
Go ahead, Mohammed, because it's true. We got bad people in our society. We got good people. We got not so bad, not so good people. So if people take power either through elections or through force or through a rigged election, I mean, isn't it really difficult to tell? Well, this is the reflection of the people.
Yeah. So the saying there is usually true, because let's go back. You just asked a very important question to my brother Ahmed. You asked a question about 1980. So let's go back to 1980. When the coup of 1980 occurred, you know, thousands and tens of thousands of people from all walks of life applauded this moment in time, this very violent moment in time. It was with the approbation of these people that the military rolled on this mass approval. Even, like the geopolitical, geopolitically, Liberia, the government benefited from that massive sort of support from the citizenry. People like Ahmed Sekou, who was a very good a friend of President Tolbert. People like the president of Senegal, I believe Senghor was still president of Senegal. Leaders who were friends with Tolbert had to take a step back. Shehu Shagari of Nigeria, those leaders had to take a step back to watch the situation very closely. And once they did, they had to completely take a step back. In the case of Ahmed Sekou, he began to lobby the sub-region, with the understanding that, look, these people, the people like their government. This is the government they have, because he was a diplomat. And he understood. He was a statesman. He understood that. A lot of other countries understood the massive approbation from the Liberian people. Dennis, even the murder of the 13 officials was with the massive approbation of the Liberian people. This was a very shameful moment in Liberian history. This is a dark moment in Liberian history that was approved by thousands, tens of thousands of Liberians who approved this kind of massive mass murder.
Are you using that word correctly?
Citizens.
Approved? You want to say approve?
What's that?
I say you want to really say they approve it or they have no choice?
Well, if you have no choice, then you would have been like people like my parents, people who never went out in the street to protest. I mean, to show support. You would have been like other Liberians who stayed in their homes and, watch the event. That didn't show this sort of outward approval. If you go out of your way and actually show your love and support, something actually urged you to get out there. Ahmed touched on that, right? So there were grievances, there were issues, and so when the person you think was the problem in your way has now been annihilated completely, and that leadership has been annihilated, so you come out in your numbers, and this is what the Liberian people did in their numbers in 1980. So yes, they approved of it. It is not everyone who approved of it, but Dennis, if polls were being taken around this time in Liberia, you could have well say that over 60%, 6 out of 10 Liberians that you would have spoken to at this time approved of this moment. It is hard to see at this time who was against this, especially when you move away from Monrovia to the rural parts of the country. This happened a long time ago, but it's still a dark moment. So yes, the Liberian people did approve of a regime change at the time. So that government was a reflection of the will of the Liberian people, and it didn't just start in 1980. You go back to 1979. And, if we follow our history very closely, in 1979, and what happened, why did Bacchus Matthews have all this support among the rural poor, the urban poor, everybody from Cape Hamas to Cape Mount, everywhere, crisscrossing the country? Why did he have this sort of support, despite the fact that some of the most progressive reforms in Liberia, in the Liberian social structure, was being carried out by President Tolbert? But it didn't matter. The Liberian people, it's as if President Tolbert was a sacrificial lamb for everything bad that happened from 1847 to that moment. And so it didn't matter that he liberalized the political environment to register, have the Progressive People's Party register as a political party. It didn't matter that he was building modern housing estates, the first of its kind in Liberia. It didn't matter that he was supporting the University of Liberia to be a first-class university in West Africa or Africa as a whole. It didn't matter that President Tolbert shared the same ideology in terms of his international outlook on issues with some of the progressive. President Tolbert supported SWAPO, ANC, and all those liberation movement in Southern Africa, but it didn't matter anyway. So it was the grievance that I'm going to talk about, that the Liberian people counted on more than anything else, and they showed their approbation when his regime was annihilated. So yes, that government, the military junta, was a reflection of the will of the Liberian people.
Thank you. Let me go to Lawrence here. What are some of those? What are some of those things? What are some of those things that when we see a government doing, and then we say, yes, this is a reflection of the society. This is how the people are. Let me crystallize it a little more. Looking at today's government, depending on how you describe it, how you take today's government to be, the we-are-led government, will you say it is the reflection of the people?
I would say that not just we are administration, but from the foundation of Liberia, every leader, every government, everything that happened has always been a reflection of the society. Now we're talking about 1980 here. my brother here talked a lot, brother Sharif here talked a lot about 1980, about the war. But let's look at the society. Let's look at Liberia as a whole. How did it begin? Let's go back to our roots and see what is the root cause of all these things from our first president to President Weah. Why are we still facing some of this same devastation that had happened from the beginning? Why are we different? Why are we Africa's oldest republic, but yet we remain its biggest village? What is the mindset of Liberia as a whole, as a society? That's where I want to get into. Because if you look at the formation of Liberia, there's not much history about Liberia until 1822, when the free slaves returned. They were returned to Liberia as a stop from the U.S. So when the ex-slaves were taken back to Liberia, they've gone through a lot of things being slaves in America. They've suffered everything that you can ever imagine, beyond what you can ever imagine. Now they were taken from America and returned to Africa.
And Lawrence, because we have a history channel now, so some of these people were born free, so they were not all ex-slave, right?
Yes. A lot. Yes. Yeah, but when they were returned to Liberia, they had two options. Okay, one option was, okay, we have suffered slavery. We have endured all the pains of slavery. Now that we are back in Liberia, let us establish a nation that detests any form of oppression, suppression. Let us build a nation of, one nation, brotherhood. Let us consider everybody equal. That's the mindset they're supposed to have had. But instead, they have also seen that while being slave, while they labored here, they see how much the profited their white masters. So when they were brought back to Liberia, they decided to go that route. They decided to build a nation that would suppress the indigenous people they met there, because it will make them richer faster. They will benefit more. They did not open their arms to accept the indigenous people. They consider themselves better. They consider themselves well educated and better on every level, superior to the indigenous people. So if you look at history, brother was talking about history. If you go back to 1822, from the time Liberia was an outpost, to 1847 when it began again its independence, up to 1980, just the descendants of the ex-slave ruled the government. They did everything. They held every position. The native people, the indigenous people, were not allowed to be part of anything. Okay, it was a struggle. There were segregated communities. There were segregated schools. Everything that the ex-slave and the descendants, the people that left from the U.S. that went to Liberia, everything they suffered here on a lesser scale.
Let me stop you a little bit. You said there were segregated schools. You said that the indigenous were not allowed in the government. They were not doing any jobs.
They were not given any good education or priorities. They were also, if you look at our people, like my parents, if you look at our grandparents, they were also called what? House boys and house girls. They were going to schools at night because they had to work on the farms of the descendants of ex-slaves. So they were not on an equal level. They were not on an equal level. The descendants were looked at inferiorly, to be inferior. So all that sentiment built. Okay, all that sentiment built. So from 1847 to 1980, things got a little better. It was not all the same all along. It was not a level playing all along. It got a little better, but there were always sentiments between what we call the Congers and the native people. And so all those sentiments were the one that boiled into the 1980 coup. Now, I'm not supporting the coup, okay, because it devastated Liberia even more. But what happened is our mindset had not changed from the foundation of our country. Our mindset has not changed at all. It's always been overlook people who you consider inferior, get what you can get, even when you empower. Even our government now will look at it. Why you are there? Just get what you can get. Pay attention to the little people, your own clique, the people that you think that surround you. give them whatever you can give them, steal whatever you can, and then leave. Then the next president comes in. It's just a virtuous circle. Okay. So if we look at society from the foundation of Liberia up to now, everything that happened in government has always been a reflection of that society. Now, the thing is, where do we move from here? Now, we can go back there and argue the past and all that, but where do we move from here? We've spent 200 years.
And we'll come to that, and we'll come to that point where we go from here. But if the society at that time, unless based on what you said, even though you said we had an indigenous vice president, we have indigenous senator, representative. We also, I don't recall any segregated school, so people went to the same school. But that's besides the point. So if your argument is society, the government is a reflection of the society, then you are saying the society at that time, including indigenous Liberian, what was being done that you have just described was a reflection of everybody. Is that what I'm hearing?
It was the reflection of everybody, you say?
It was a reflection of the entire Liberian society. Because you are saying one group is suppressing the other, but at the same time you are saying a government is a reflection of the people. So which people in this sense?
So the new government that came there now, if you look at from 1980, what caused the war and everything was a reflection of all those negative impacts on the lesser people or the weaker people or the indigenous people at that time that was considered. All that impact from the previous governments made them to reach that point where they decided, okay, we're going to take power in our own hand. That was not the right thing to do. There was not unity. There was not togetherness as it should be, but that was not the right thing to do. So because the native people went through all that pain, they decided they were going to take power. And that's what Brother Sharif was saying. When they took power, there was celebration and all that. There was not supposed to be celebration, but they felt that they were free now. Why were they celebrating? Because they felt that they were free. They felt that they had been liberated. Now, was it the right thing to do? No, it was not. But all that reflection, all that build-up was the one that led to the war. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Mr. Salif.
Well, what I gather from the foundation Lawrence is building is in terms of the foundation of the nation is very important, right? And our history, if we go back, a lot of what has been taught, people can argue that, but really what you learn in school is from 1822, from the arrival of the settlers, we call them. There was exclusion. I mean, we cannot deny that today, Dennis. We've come a long way. We work to promote inclusivity, and our society is in such a place now where it's really difficult to demarcate whether somebody is now Congo or country, and intermarriages have happened. It's such a small country, such a small society. But what I gather from Lawrence's presentation is really the exclusion happened. Look, as scholars have written about this, the coup, or even April 14, 1979, April 12, 1980, all of those things, the rice riot and the coup, that there were grievances that boiled up. And a major factor of that was exclusion, political exclusion, economic exclusion. Yes, I mean, you can't, there were native people who made their way in government. So it was really a patronage system where there was the ward system. You got a child from the interior, either you educated them or you enslaved them, they worked for you, and people changed their identity, people changed their names, so that they could be accepted, so that they could include. People had to, I had uncles and relatives from my side who had to change religious faith tradition, had to change their names to be included, to be welcome, to be accepted. That is just a historical fact. I mean, no one can deny that, really. You have to show me the reality of the history that doesn't include exclusion and that kind of practice that I think some of what, I sense what Lawrence is describing there. But of course, aside from the segregated school and all of that, those exclusionary practices, in terms of economic exclusion, political exclusion, and even educational, institutional sort of structuring in such a way that economically, if you aren't empowered, no one said you can't come go to CWA, you can't go to St. Patrick's, you can't go to this school at the University of Liberia. But if you didn't have the economic means, if your family was one of those families that was impoverished, they didn't have access to political power and political connection. Of course, you didn't afford to go to those schools. No one said don't come or there was segregation in that respect, but there was structural segregation. We have to face that. There was structural segregation, and so it's not revisionism of the history, but I think the point I'm taking there, any society that wants to move forward has to confront its history. Some societies even rewrite their history, they review their history so that they establish accurate versions of the history, so as to have everybody embracing that version, seeing themselves in that history in order then to move forward. Because while you're asking about government, the government today, the government of Ellen Johnson's those administration, the government of Charles Taylor's administration, President Taba's administration, those are all reflection of the society. Because the wave and trends of things that were happening in the society at the time made certain people influential in society, and so they had opportunity to either be elected or found themselves in government somewhat, whether you were appointed or you got elected in office. So yes, today where we've come, our society is sort of metamorphed and evolved, and that's why we're saying there are a lot of, for example, uneducated, half educated, not properly educated, not educated at all, young people in our society. How do we get there? Because of some of this history. The history of violence, the 1980, the pre-1980, the Charles Taylor War, and all these various warring factions. So grievances upon grievances created a conflict environment. Some scholars call it the conflict trap, right? You get in the conflict trap or the economic trap. It's difficult to get out of that. So what we have on our hands, Dennis, is the very elements in society. Whether you properly train or not, whether you educated or not, you have political voice. If you push your way through, we see young people singing behind politicians. They're more influential than you and I because they're there. They're the ones who are on the ground. They're the ones who are making noise. They're the ones who get on the radio. They're the ones who get elected or appointed.
So, Mr. Salif, if we look at, say, the Taylor government, the Ellen government, and now the Weah government, what can you show me that in these governments were actually the reflection of the people? What can you tell me?
Oh, I can tell you plenty, Dennis. So just the mindset, because see, we can talk about the role of government, but you have to look for indicators of a successfully run country. Okay, there's the various indicators, there's the UN Governance Development Index, there's a Social Justice Index, all kinds of indexes that are there. We can go back and say, where does Liberia fit here? How happy are our people? What makes a people happy, right? When they have these basic services, the social contract between the government and the government. If the government is implementing strong institutions, inclusive institutions, economic opportunity, basic services, education, health, housing, so forth and so on. People are able to send their children to school, and they get sick, they go to hospital. Something happens, they go to court, they get fair judgment. They don't have to push things under the table. When that happens, a country produces a happy people, a happy population. You don't have a happy population, you have people who then are just doing whatever they can to get in government. Right now in Liberia, the most lucrative type of job you can get is to be elected as a legislator. You earn all this money, you have access to budget, you just become rich overnight. Why is that so? That is a reflection of the mentality of the society because of where the society is right now. The question is, how do we move from there? Because even somebody is not ordinarily in other society, well-established, organized societies, if this person doesn't have certain kind of training, certain kind of skill set, society, the community, the constituency will not see them as the best to represent them necessarily, or the best to be appointed minister, even though they can produce, they can run their department efficiently or otherwise. And so, yeah, that reflects what we have on our hands now.
Thank you. And we'll come to how we move from here. But let me get to Mohamed. Mohamed, one word, if anybody who watch Focus on Liberia will remember Mohamed, is the word incompetence to describe the current government. If you say that if we are government is incompetent, what does that say about the society, our Liberian society? Incompetent as well?
I haven't said that yet tonight, but I am about to. You best believe. So, yeah. So, the question there is, why do we have this government as opposed to, for example, why do we have George Weah as opposed to Joseph Boakai, who came second in the 2017 elections. So it is, again, a reflection of the Liberian populace that went to the polls to vote. Keep in mind, back in 2005 or 2006, during that election, George Weah was on the precipice of becoming president of the Republic of Liberia. He was very, very competitive, to put it mildly. He beat Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in the first round. For some reason now, he couldn't drive it home in the second round. And in the subsequent, the following elections after that, when he was a vice presidential candidate, the party was still very competitive. And so we also, what happened now when he took back the reins later on. So he has been in 3 elections, and he's never been a pushover. George Weah has never been since he entered the political space. He's never been a pushover. That you can't say. So, it is a reflection of the Liberian mentality. What is that mentality now? And this is something we've talked about. We talk about what has gone on with the Liberian mentality ever since the early days of the founding of the nation. So, we have to look back. We can't help but to look back at what happened. Lawrence mentioned, the foundation of the Liberian nation state. I mean, there were injustices. Yes, there were injustices committed. There were exclusions. Every society like individuals, have their own foibles. We all have our own foibles. But the thing for any society then is to move on, is to adapt and develop new ways to move on. Dennis, in 1955, when S. David Coleman and his son John were killed, the report is that their body was displayed at the Barclays Training Center. And because Tubman did that, you saw subsequent administrations after Tubman. I don't know if Torba did, but Mr. Doe did, displaying bodies at the Barclays Training Center. So a president was laid there, where now leaders have to display the body of their enemies at the Barclays Training Center. So
Mr. Sharif, I want to be tough here. You often describe the government as being corrupt, has been incompetent.
Yeah.
Okay, we have square pegs in round holes. Mm-hmm. Is that how our society is? Liberian society corrupt?
The Liberian society, yes, the Liberian society. Don't get me in trouble, but I am going to say yes. The Liberian society, the Liberian society. If the Liberian society is not corrupt, the Liberian society has very much bought into a demagogue, has invested into demagogues who are corrupt, who bring T-shirts and bag of rice and $5 bills to them to get them into offices. And this is what's happening. It's very unfortunate. And these demagogues, by the way, are trying to keep the people as very uneducated, unwell, where there are no good clinics and hospitals, where they themselves and their families can fly to Ghana, India, and the United States and Europe, where the average Liberian people are left with JFK, which is just for killing. That's the other name, AAK, just for killing. So people go in there and they die. And so the demagogues don't care. They don't care about the average Liberian people. They care about their own pockets. And so why is it that we're not throwing these demagogues out of office like yesterday? Why haven't we thrown them out of office like yesterday? Why aren't we taking the progressive steps to make sure that the election timetable, that the tenure for the presidency is reduced to 4 years? The tenure for these representatives who are not doing anything at all is reduced to 4 years. Why aren't we making sure that the tenures for our senators is reduced to 4 years as well? I don't care if the person is serving. There need to be some form of accountability. If the Liberian people are not holding these people accountable, then the Liberian people themselves, Dennis, to directly answer your question, are culpable. They are corporates in their own depression, in their own suppression by the demagogues, by people who have no business being president. So what you have is a bunch of bootlickers of the status quo who will go and sing these battle cries that Ahmed talk about every morning, every now and then. You get up, every day you get up, you hear some groups, chanting battle cries, and the next thing they go home and eat dry rice. What is that? What is that? Why have we reduced ourselves to nothing? We have become nothings. And this is a shame. And this is the Liberian people at this time should be outraged by what is going on. I have not mentioned incompetence yet, but incompetence is all over the place. I am here in the United States. I am outraged. I am outraged. Everyone and their brother should be outraged. Everyone and their mother should be outraged that this is allowed to happen. Why is this allowed to happen in the Republic of Liberia, a very, very old country? I love Liberia, and this is the reason why, Dennis, I'm here talking about these issues. Hopefully, I am making a contribution. I don't hate anybody. You have people coming at me saying, you hate the president and you this and that and the other. If the hate for the president will bring change to Liberia, will be a meaningful change to Liberia, then by all means, I will hate the president. But I love this president. This is the president this is the man, as a man, as an athlete. This is the man that brought us joy. You know that, Dennis, in the refugee camps. This is the man that put Liberia on the map of soccer, of world soccer. This is the man everywhere you go. One time I was in my office and I saw someone from Algeria who came from Algeria, from northern Algeria, somewhere in Algeria. He came into our office and I talked to him. He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Liberia." He said, "Oh, George." The first name he mentioned was George Weah. This is years ago, before Weah ever became president. So the first thing he mentioned was George Weah. He didn't say J.J. Roberts. He didn't say Stephen Allen Benson. He didn't name any names. Okay, Charles did no name, none of these other names, right? But or Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman president of Liberia and perhaps Africa. He didn't mention any of these names. He said George Weah. So George Weah is a guy that brought us a lot, during our period of hardship. That is to his credit. But at the same time, there is a delineation between a celebrity and a political figure and a real leader. So he's not a leader. Okay, he's a celebrity status. He's someone who's a great, terrific athlete. One of the best players in the world, one of the best athletes in the world. But at the same time, he's not a leader. And so, because he's not a leader, it troubles me that the Liberian people celebrate him in the manner they do now. That everywhere he goes, and I listen to you heard the young lady said, Mr. Weah, the poem that the young lady wrote, that said Mr. Weah is the best president in Liberian history. I mean, the audacity and the historical mendacity to go out there and say George Weah is the best president of the Republic of Liberia. I mean, this is a shame that I'm listening to this, that someone actually is saying this in a global space. And so that's where we are. So she is culpable of everything that goes on in Liberia. Meanwhile, she's not in Liberia. She lives in Canada. Okay, so she doesn't feel the hardship, but she has the audacity to say that. How mendacious.
Thank you. Let me welcome Carl Famula. That's our public policy analyst and also host of the Liberia History Channel. Carl, is the Liberian government a reflection of the society?
I believe it is. I mean, in a democracy, the mindset of the majority of the people is usually reflected in those that they select for leadership. That's just a given. It's very difficult to have the majority of people in the country. Like, we're the very young country. That's the first thing. And the majority of the human beings in Liberia the median age in Liberia is 17, I believe, or 15, something like that. It's young, right? So the average person is a child. And the number of people in the country who were born after the destruction of the country is greater than the number of people who were born before the destruction of the country. So education systems have been dismantled, and they do not look like they did. They're not even as strong as they were, before 1990, before 1980. There's been a terrible decline. So people are not getting the same quality of education. You can see that in the output, right? So this whole complaining about how indigenous people were not educated. Indigenous people historically have been some of the most educated people in our society. I mean, you cannot ignore giants like J.J. Dosen, Marias, all of these giant intellectuals of history, the early 20th century, late 19th century.
If you can fix your audio a little bit, it kind of there are some lapses in there when you're talking in and out.
Okay, so I don't really know how to do that. Can you hear me a little bit better?
A little better.
Sounds better.
Okay, so the problem really is that people don't. There's a clear, documented assault on the Liberian narrative. It was exacerbated during the Cold War. A lot of our history, our understanding of ourselves has been distorted. A lot of the divisions among us have been exaggerated. And I see everyone kind of repeating this narrative. This is also a product of this disinformation campaign against our country. You have a whole group of young people that are being raised to think that their ancestors were a bunch of bush willies who did nothing and contributed nothing to the foundation of the country or its advancement, or it's the maintenance of its sovereignty. You have a whole generation of people who believe this. If you survey 1,000 Liberians, it might be only 2 who understand things differently. That's not an accident. So when they come into power, they think that they're taking over something that is not of them. They think that they're taking over some kind of foreign occupancy. So now it has been since 1980, we, the indigenous people of the country, have so-called taken the land back. I mean, Samuel Doe left all the way from Jida. He went to Duko to go kill president for his father's land that's still in Jida undeveloped. And we sit there and we repeat narratives that don't make sense. Things that we know is we take the moment and pause and think rationally. Can you imagine Liberians think that they were taken off of their land and put on reservations like Native Americans because they don't think before they speak? Liberians use words like segregation when what they really mean is wealth disparity. Or really what it is cultural disparity. And when you say cultural disparity, we were human beings before 1822. We had our own belief systems. We had our own cultures. We had our own way of life. People come into the country. They're different. They have been westernized. That was not something that we necessarily wanted to assimilate into. I'm bringing all of this background information up to just talk about the confusion and the lack of understanding of the country, and even of ourselves as indigenous people, who are the vast majority of the citizens. Our self-esteem has become so low that we look at our own ancestors as, jungle bunny dimwits that didn't know how to do anything and that were victimized, when it's not actually factual. For example, we had governments, we had our own class discrepancies. We have taken those discrepancies into the modern, discriminations and divisions into the modern era. You have tribalism that's still existing. You still have people in the Southeast who are clan-based and they gang up on each other. You still have all of these problems that existed before 1822 still existing. We're coming into the 2023. You still hear people talking about, oh, George, we had also cool people in government. These are not things that were taught to us by anyone. This is this group of people that thinks it's one group of natives. We are a diverse group of people from many different backgrounds, language families. We've had many conflicts that are outside of the scope of the Republic of Liberia, that are older than the Republic of Liberia. We don't talk about any of this stuff. So the reason the society cannot come together, just really quick, the reason the society cannot come together is because the government itself, and it's not only the WIA administration, but the government historically has failed to educate the citizens about what their relationship is to the country and what their expectations and responsibilities are.
Thank you.
And that's why you have leaders like George who are doing what he's doing at the Africa Summit, which is photo bombing everything he can, any chance he gets.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Lawrence, and talk about the present. I know you talk about other governments, but let's look at today's government. I don't know how you describe it, and what in today's government that tells you that it is the reflection of our society today.
Incompetence. I'll use exactly the same word that Sharif used. Incompetence is a big part of our society, of our government. And I was just looking. I was looking at a video recently about some Ghanaian politicians that were running for office, and they took bag of rice to distribute to the young people so that the young people can vote for them. And the young people took those bags of rice, threw them back in the car, and drove off those politicians. They said, "We don't want rice. We want education. We want a way forward. We don't just want you to feed our bellies." Now, if George Weah or any other politician there take bag of rice and give it to our young people, they sing songs for them. They will write new songs for them. They will sing their praises. They will write poems for them and say, "This is the best person ever because they fed me." So the reflection here is, what I see, the reflection is that the population, the society, is now holding these political leaders at a higher expectation. They're just going for anything as long as you can satisfy the population or the society, well, many of the people in the society, with food, with any little essentials, they will vote for you. So it's a reflection of the society. If the society changes, if we start thinking better, start caring for ourselves better, and start holding these people responsible and say, "Hey, we don't want your money. We don't just want your food. We want you to do more than what you are doing now for us," things will change. But the society is not looking at it that way. So the leaders, the government, is doing what they can because they know they can get by, because they know the society is not going to hold them accountable, and they can give whatever little they think they can give to the society and get by with it. So that's another thing that they're looking at. So I was just reading something here earlier. I just want to make mention of it real quick. It said not many representative governments can be much better or much worse than the society it represents. Not many representative governments can be much better or much worse than the society it represents. If the society it represents stand up and demand change, the government will change. If the society does not demand change, they do not go out there and create some kind of a urge or urgency to push the government to be better, we will continue the same path that we've always been on.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, let's look at this, and I'm going to throw a hypothetical situation here. Let's say 2017, let's say Joseph Newman Boakai won, and he became a very good president. Will we be saying the same thing, that yes, the society is the reflection of the people? I'll give you another example. President Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know, even if far-right Republicans believe that he was a good president, but it was the American society that produced him. So such a man who was, who didn't do many things right. We also say that was a reflection of the American society. How you reconcile the two?
Well, I mean, it's very reconcilable. In the Donald Trump example, I began by saying that those who argue that they're outliers in society. So if you consider the American society an example of a well-run society, and then we're not talking about the social sort of structural inequalities in this country, that we can't rate America anywhere close to number one. So that's not where I'm going with this. But if you just go by what they're promoting around the world, liberal democracy and so on, running a system, running a country, then you can say Donald Trump was an outlier, negative outlier, terrible human being who brought out some of the racist sentiments and racist ideologies in this country that is still very much permeating in the society. On the other hand, too, there are societies that generally have been done well and they're being haunted by their histories. And you have good outliers, people who have stood up and said, no, we can't continue on like this because this is taking us nowhere. We need to pivot. We need to change the trajectory and do good things. Like I said, be people of integrity, good moral standing in society. Actually, because society is about changing minds. I should say, to begin to really have the society to produce a good reflection of itself is the mind. If your mind is conditioned to not believe in yourself, if your mind is conditioned to accept mediocrity, to accept, handouts, you'll be going around begging everybody to come to solve your problem, right? If your mind is conditioned that, I can build something, I can develop something, I can grow something, then you start conditioning your population to think about growing stuff that they can eat, that people can eat, maybe selling some of the excesses of that. And so even if you had elected Joseph Boakai in 2017 and he became president in 2018, he would have constituted a cabinet. And that cabinet basically would be a reflection of how the society has been operating from when. People have the mentality that even if you have a good leader, right, and you ask someone to serve in an area, they have access to budget. The first thing they start to think about themselves, their friends, and their families, now people around them. That's just kind of how Mohamed was telling you not to put in trouble by asking whether the society is corrupt. I'm not going to mince my word on that because, listen, if you can go to the youngest person, the most religious of institutions in Liberia, and throw a bag of money at them, so distribute this among your membership or build schools, build clinic, you'll see that the very religious among them will be the ones who will take most of that money for themselves. Now, if that's not a corrupt society, I don't know what that is. Some people have a hard time speaking the truth. People have a hard time being really honest. Whether in the business dealings, in the dealings of government, everything is really about, and this is not to say, look, nobody's saying there are other societies who are perfect out there, that there's no classism and there's none of these social problems or issues in other societies. There are, right? But there are also other societies who, with all these problems, they've been making progress, moving their societies forward. We seem to be stagnated. We seem to be stuck in abject poverty, in the lack of, really building our society to make our people happy. And so to me, it doesn't matter who the head is. President Sirleaf was there. I mean, you can argue that, she admitted to contributing to the child stealer war. She was there, part of the progressive. This happened, that happened. But when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was president, one thing you can say about her was that she didn't hire people who she thought were competent, who could deliver. Now, all those people, were they upright, good, outstanding citizens with high integrity? There are a lot of them who you can say yes to that, but there are also a lot of them who were just fending for themselves, their friends, their pockets, their overseas accounts, and so forth and so on. So there you have it. You had somebody who was trying to change things, to build systems, institutions, and integrity institutions to turn the country around. And those who were helping her do that, a lot of them were also creating problems. So whether it was Ellen Sirleaf, Joseph Buckeye, George Weah, you have a reflection of yourself in the mirror. And that is what you find in our government today. So it's not really about who you put there. It's about how you're going to begin changing your society in a different direction, beginning with the mindset, the mental model people talk about, how people think about themselves, how they see their societies, what they think about their own abilities. Do they even understand these institutions, the presidency, the sovereignty we have, the history of Liberia, Liberia's place in society, in the world? Some of the greatest institutions in this world today, Liberia was at the founding table. So where are we today with diplomacy? Where are we today with all of these in our standing in Africa, with the African Union, in the ECOWAS region, and with the United Nations and International Committee of Nations? So we're not saying our country wasn't solid and they didn't, our founders and founding fathers didn't, and founding fathers and mothers didn't contribute significantly. They did. Of course, it was a difficult beginning for even the settlers who came. You read some of their accounts, people died, right? And so to ask the question whether if it was Joseph Barker or George Weah, would it still be the reflection? To me, even if you put one of us here who, if you, there will be the reflection. The people you have to with you to do the job, I don't care how upright and upstanding as a citizen you are, is that society. That is what we have, and that's what we see in our government.
Because you're not going to bring people from Pluto. Let me go to Carl. Carl, how with all the things we're using now to describe the government, we say it's a reflection of the people. How did we get here?
I mean, I kind of answered that the last time. If you don't mind, I want to kind of address what
piece, right?
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead, answer that again. Carl, before you come in, there's Sam Wallow here who's talking about the summit. And maybe this too is a reflection of our society, right? He said Liberia has 3 strong days at the US-Africa Summit, and FOL instead chooses to talk about reflections of society and the role of government. He is shocked. And he continues that he said, okay, he continues, this entire week should be dedicated to the summit. It is a big deal.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal for a different reason, because I understand what it is. It is not an attempt for a partnership.
Is that mindset a reflection of our society, or
it is a reflection of our society? Like, we don't even know, and it's not just Liberia, it's Africa in general. We don't even know when someone is bringing us, when we're being invited to the table as dinner. You think we're being invited to the table as a guest. You're being invited to the table. You're the dinner. That's what this African summit is. This is about consumerism. They're looking for new markets for the U.S. to expand to Africa, to exploit for the benefit of the U.S. They're not looking for partnerships. As Al Jazeera, a commentator said on Al Jazeera, they're not looking for partnership. They're looking for more slaves. I mean, it's a little extreme, but what they're really looking for is new consumers. If you read all the literature surrounding this, they're looking for, so now they've got the resource drain, now they're looking for consumers. They're looking for ways to bring their companies up. They're not looking for ways to bring Africa up. So wealth is a zero-sum game. They keep revising and updating and upgrading ways to exploit Africans and keep Africans in subjugation and dependency. And we, because of our level of understanding as a society, we think this is a good thing. We think it's a good thing that corporations come to us, build these factories, poison our water supply, pay us less than livable wages, take a couple of people, give them good money, and make billions of dollars. You know, like Chevrons and the Coca-Colas and all these corporations have done. We think that this is good. And meanwhile, we turn around and say, well, why is Africa so poor when there's been all this investment? That is not investment. That is extraction and exploitation. And because we have not, because our education systems, the way we think, has been molded by the West, we don't understand what we need to do as a society to stand up on our own feet and conduct ourselves like human beings. Like, you know, so this idea that the Africa Summit is something that we should all be jumping up for joy, that, oh, they're not trying to rescue us. You know, you're going to see it. I hope we all live long enough to see the fruition. And this is why the study of the past is so important, because it puts things into the proper context. History tells you what happened before you were born that caused the world to be organized the way it is. And once you understand why the world is organized the way it is, you will know how to conduct yourself. And so if you want to confuse people, you want to make them think differently and incorrectly about themselves and their situation, you distort their history. And that is what has happened to us. So the society thinks that it is a great thing for George Weah to leave the country for 48 days just because now he's taking pictures with the imperialists. He's taking pictures with Joe Biden. This is more important than George Weah coming to Liberia and coming up with a strategy to help his citizens think differently and elevate themselves. I mean, so that's really what this boils down to. And what I was, I forgot what Mr. Sharif said that I had wanted to respond to.
Yes, quickly, I was asking, how did we get here? So you, for 1 minute, just quickly on that one.
How did we get where? To the place
where the reflection of our society, as we see in the government, is corruption, is incompetence, and all the negative things that that the other panelists alluded to.
I mean, 200 years of U.S. military, you know, and missionary and you know, disinformation campaign in the country. So you've got a society of people who were educated to conduct themselves exactly how they're conducting themselves. We're a product of the system of education that was given to us. And so this is what we're supposed to be doing, because this works best to benefit others. So we exist as a society that is dysfunctional, turns all of their aggression inward, and benefits people who live elsewhere. When Mr. Sharif was talking about leadership, really quick, Dennis, you know, that leadership, you know, cannot change the society, I disagree. A good leader that understands the problem, that has really studied the problem, knows that what you need to do is re-educate and inspire people to do better. So you're correct that a leader cannot change Liberia just by coming in and sitting in a desk and trying to push papers or going around giving speeches and hugging babies. No, you have to do the hard work of inspiring the citizens to know that the destiny of their country is in their hands, not in the leader's hands. So the purpose of leadership is to inspire the people to do what they need to do to lift themselves out of poverty. And so it is possible. It can be done. It's been done. There's many examples globally where that's been done. So that's the only disagreement with Mr. Sharif. I mean, certainly on that issue.
Is that Sharif or Sirleaf?
I said Sirleaf.
Okay.
Surely, is this two of them are the same Monday? So
Exactly. If you,
When y'all learn how to pronounce Carl, learn how to pronounce your name too.
Mr.
if you don't know, just say Mamadi Sirleaf.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Let's take some time now, because the way society, government being reflection of the people, and now we see that from what you've told me, government is not doing so well. That's a society, man. I mean, I'm here. I'm doing a focus on Liberia. Sometimes you are having a show, right? And somebody's supposed to be on a show, say 5 o'clock, and they tell you, "I'm coming. I just be there," you know,
Right.
and they are nowhere there. I'm like, okay. If you're not going to be there, just tell me I'm going to be ready in an hour, and then I don't have to sit here waiting for you. So sometimes little things, we don't take them as important, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that frustrates me. Mr. Salif, Mr. Sheriff, how do we
yes.
how do we move forward then?
Yeah, so it is very important you mentioned that. I think one of our shows, I told an anecdote. My principal, Mr. William Reeves, we went to school campus. A friend of mine and I think I was in the 10th grade and he was in the 9th grade, and so we get on campus and there's nobody on campus. We got there early and we started to go back. We walked back, we were going to the bread shop. There was somewhere where, we used to buy bread, So we tried to go back there and get some bread to eat, or kala to eat, I should say. And Mr. Reeves saw it, said, "Where are you guys going?" He said, "Well, we're just going, we're going to my AC, please, we'll come right back." He said, "But why aren't you on campus?" We said, "Nobody on campus." He laughed and he said, "You're not somebody? You are somebody. When you get there, other people will see you there." And so he preaches punctuality, right? So leadership is very important, even at that level. And just talk about leadership. Our presidents historically have been trendsetters, right, of our national attitudes. So most of the things that you see now, corruption is fanciful. What do you think is fancy? What do you think the people have this idea from? What do you think concretizes the people's disposition to corruption? Right? It's because they see their leaders. It's fancy among the leadership. The president of the republic, George Weah, who's very corrupt. You see that, he's riding around in big cars. He fly private jets all over the place. He has left his country for about 2 months and there's no consequence. So what do you think an average carpenter who's going to get a contract, okay, to build a bed for me, what do you think it's going to do? There will be lapses. I'm just giving you an example of how leadership is important. We've had
how we move forward.
Dennis, yeah, I'll come to that point. Dennis, J.J. Roberts, right? When J.J. Roberts left the presidency, I don't know if people know this, but when J.J. Roberts left the presidency, J.J. Roberts, when he died, no, he was still alive. J.J. Roberts is one of the founders, if not the founder, of the University of Liberia. So J.J. Roberts taught at the University of Liberia when it was Liberia College. Can you imagine now, George Weah, retiring from the presidency to go teach at the University of Liberia? Is he going to be able to do that? He's not going to. So when people talk about our history, all the wrong that happened in the past, but let's look at some positive. We could have built on those positives that happened in the past. So it's not everything that was done in the past that was negative. I mean, we started getting into this extension of presidential terms really in the mid 1940s when Tubman was president. That's when presidential terms went eternal. The opposition was decimated. We know from history that there were opposition from time to time, but it was decimated. So to your question, how do we move forward? There has to be a conscious effort. It's not just going to occur overnight now. We are where we are. There has to be a level of commitment on the part of the government itself. To me, I think this trickles down. And if the government cannot do it, can the people do it? Right? So civic education is important. How about at the level of perhaps You know, even elementary, people are taught their rights, their duties to nation, their rights and responsibilities as citizens of the Liberian nation state. That is not occurring. That doesn't occur. How come that cannot occur? Why is it that's not occurring? It's because you have individuals who have no vision, who have no ideas, and quite frankly, they like it the way it is. They want to keep the people undereducated, underfed, unhealthy, so that they can continue their leadership perpetually. You heard this of this chief from Nimba County when George Weah visited. He said that he would like to remove a clause where, you know, presidential term limit. He said, "My son, we want you to be president forever." You know, this is a kind of idea, and don't think that this is isolated. This can go on. We've seen this happen before. So why is this happening? Because the trend has been set. Leaders are trendsetters. Our presidents are trendsetters. And George Weah didn't sit there to say, you know, he didn't dispel that. He should have exercised leadership to dispel those kinds of things. Our leaders need to set the example. George Weah is not setting a good example. George Weah said, you know, Secretary Blinken, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the peace-loving people of Liberia. Well, except that you weren't coming from Liberia, you're coming from Qatar. You might as well say, I bring you greetings from the people of Qatar and the World Cup fans. That's what it was.
Thank you.
You know, it's embarrassing, Dennis, as a Liberian to watch that sideshow.
Thank you. Lawrence, we are winding down, so we want to look at how can we move forward. Let me give you two examples, and that may help.
Yep.
Many Liberians give example of Jerry John Rawlings or Thomas Sankara and say we need that kind of leadership to turn the things around. We're still talking about reflection of the society. So if you have Jerry John Rawlings turn Ghana around in spite of the society, Thomas Sankara doing the same thing, or we hope we will have done more. How do we move forward? Do we need a Jerry John Rawlings type president? Is that going to fix the situation?
Yes, we do. We need a leader whose actions are louder than their words. We need somebody who's transformational. We need transformational leadership. Somebody who will look at things and be like, okay, who really cares for the country first? Who is patriotic? Because most of the leaders we have, they're not. They really don't care for us. They really don't care for the country. We need a patriotic leader who has a different kind of mindset that would be like, okay, it's time for us to move forward. A leader who can feel ashamed of his country. Because that's one thing. Guilt and shame, I really believe that guilt and shame are two big ingredients to change. Because guilt and shame can bring conviction. Now, if you are out there as a leader representing Liberia among other African countries, even if you leave Liberia, you go to other African countries, you see their airport, you see their cities, you see how clean they are. If you can't feel guilty enough to be like, I want my country to be like this, my country is terrible, there's not going to be any change. So we need leaders who still have the ability to feel ashamed of our country. And we need leaders who have a mindset that is different, that will not be there looking for stuff for themselves, but instead looking to benefit the people, not their own selves. That's what Rawlings and Sankara and all these other great leaders did. They were tired. They were tired of the same old thing going on and on. They wanted change, and they were able to motivate their people to bring change. So we need those things. Now, besides the mindset and desire go hand in hand. You have a mindset to change. What you think is what you become. But what you desire also is what you become. And so we need leaders who has the mindset to change things, who has the desire to change things. And they can do that. People can do that. It's been done before in history. We're giving all the examples of these leaders. It can be done. The first thing the leader has to do is to get the attention of the country. So look at that. I don't know how much the president or the presidency or all these cabinet members are getting paid. But look at U.S., for example, the United States. The president is getting paid for what? $400 million a year or so, $400,000 a year or so. How much are our leaders making? That's one place our leaders can start. If they really want change, they can push that thing and say, look, we don't have to make this money. We don't have to make millions of dollars a year when our citizens can't even make, they can't even feed themselves. Some people are living on 25 cents a day. Some people don't even have that. And you have leaders who are making millions of dollars a month. So there has to be a transformational kind of leadership that have the mindset to change the country and the desire to do what's right. Those are the two main things I look at.
Thank you. And Mr. Sharif, I'm coming to you. And let me start with Jimmy Eastman. Say, every day we need leader, we need leader, we need leader. We have to be the change we want. Then it will be reflected in our politics and democracy. Stop this savior concept. And I want to add to that we can have that leader today. And if that leader is gone, just like Hufwe Boyner is gone, and then things go back to the same. So this thing is hard, man. Now we have we tired of suffering rally. Are those the kind of thing that going to turn things around, or is it the leader? Is it the people? Give me an idea of how much effort this will take.
When I was talking earlier about whether you put George Weah or Buakai, the reflection will happen. I didn't imply if I did. That certainly, I studied leadership myself, and I do believe that leaders, trendsetters, like Mohamed said, leaders can be inspire their people. The leaders have to set bold vision and let the people believe that they can do it, they can get there, and then put some capacity behind it. Look for the technical components of it. So you can have vision, you inspire your people, you help them with the path. What Jimmy is talking about, the savior mentality. It's not necessarily the leader who's coming to save you, but the people look up to someone who can help them set the direction and say, look, this is where we could get if we do X, Y, Z, right? There are all kinds of things. You can go, the technical solution track. You can go the economic growth. When people who study development, they talk about all kinds of different models. State directed, whether development comes from within the country or whether development comes from outside the country. Whether development is all technical based or whether it's social, cultural, and all of these things blended together. So you really have to find a good fit for your country because every society is unique and special. Liberia, we always say we're very unique and special people. So yeah, I agree that you need a bold leader who sets a new trend, a positive trend, and make the people believe in themselves and speak against these negative tendencies that we have, but also act it out and then invest in critical areas. Education takes a long time to see the dividend, but if you educate a population, we talk about Rwanda today. We talk about some of what coming criminal debt in Ghana, right? We see countries that we have examples, Lee Kuan Yew and others we talk about. They have vision. And they say, okay, to get there, we need an educated population, for example. And I'm not just saying university educated, you train people in trade, in vocational, and all kinds of other ways that people can get education and be able to contribute in the formal economy or get an informal sector in a place where it can lead to all kinds of better outcomes. So yes, leadership, vision, but also capable, competent people. All of these things contribute to what's known as state capability, really for the ability of the state to grow in different dimensions, not just the GDP or economic growth dimensions, but also in other ways that can make the society happy and people believe in themselves.
If you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. Our topic today, a government is a reflection of the society through of us. And we're going to be discussing the case of Liberia. If you want to be a part of the conversation, call the number on your screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791403. Let's take one caller and then call will come in what we can do to move forward. The caller on the line is Elvis. Elvis Morris, go ahead, you're live.
Mr. Jai, you talking to us when I hear you. Oh, no.
Yeah, go ahead, Elvis. Oh, okay. You are not hearing me. I see why.
Unmuted.
Elvis, go ahead. Elvis, are you
Yeah,
there?
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you were muted on your side first. But quickly, let me just get to my points. I think, the gentlemen on the show, they're right, especially Mr. Sharif. Not Sharif, but Salif. The reality is corruption permeates every facet of our society. And almost everybody in Liberia has, performed some act of corruption. Even when you go to the bank and you pay somebody $10 just so you can get in front of the line, or you go and do something, you gotta pay somebody small things so they can do it for you faster. That's a form of corruption. So it's a part of our daily life, and we exhibit it every day. For example, in America, somebody who even has the perception of impropriety, most people would leave them, would not even touch them with a 10-foot pole as a presidential candidate or even a political candidate, for the exception of Donald Trump, of course. So in Liberia, those kind of people, we say, you know what? I don't care. Is it a man corrupt? But we still vote for him. Because most of those people see those people as themselves. Because most of them has been involved in some form of corrupt act. So we as a people, as a country, we're corrupt. That's why we always pick corrupt leaders. And to tell you the truth, I don't see any politician in our country who from their private life hasn't performed some act of corruption or is now currently performing some act of corruption, whether that people going to the bank to take advantage of the relationship with the bankers, to take money and not pay it back. We see all of these different, acts of corruption. So for me, our country is doomed simply because we as a people, we haven't elevated ourselves personally to become better citizens, and thereby our leaders are going to reflect us. So that's how our country is, and it's been like that. It's probably going to remain like that in the near future, and hopefully not the far future. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you. Carl, let me get your take on how we move forward before I bring in more callers.
I mean, I think the recipe for how to move forward, the big future picture for Liberia has been painted a long time ago. We need to revive that spirit of self-determination, of courage. What needs to happen, the most important thing that needs to happen, is that the size of the government needs to be reassessed. The government is too large. We have too many representatives for our population. We have far too many counties. For our population, this constant dividing into counties, all of this is draining and straining the national budget. And a lot of this was just created so that people could have jobs, right? So, we'll just make Bopru so the Bopru people can have, more representatives. They didn't want to all be in local. So a lot of things, the way the country is carved out, needs to be reassessed. Above all, the number one priority is re-education, a massive national re-education campaign where ideas of uprightness and patriotism and civic duty are taught to the citizens just like they are in the United States and most advanced countries in the world. They start this process as young as preschool to teach people simple things: wait your turn, always tell the truth, respect one another. These are things that you start teaching people from childhood, not only through the education system, also in the homes. We have failed somewhere. And that process is not something we need to reinvent. We just need the courage to do it. And, I hope that sooner than later, we have a leadership with the courage to do what is necessary. And I hope sooner or later, especially with the advent of social media and all of this, that the citizens start to awaken and start to demand the correct steps to correct Liberia. Our problems are solvable. Our citizens are resilient. They have overcome greater adversity than what is facing us today, like global white imperialism and the colonization of Africa. There's nothing that we're facing today that is more challenging than what was faced in 1880. So we need to look at that and inspire ourselves to do better. And I think the rest will solve itself.
Thank you. Let's go back to our call line. The next caller here is GS Camus. Mr. Camus, you're live. Mr. Camus, please mute that device you're listening to and let hear you.
Okay. Yeah, Brother Dennis, thanks again. Thanks to the panelists. I mean, this program tonight is very much interesting, and almost all the panelists are touching on everything that some of us thinking about. Most especially Brother Ahmed and the man who always say Joe is corrupt and everything. So, and also Brother Zappa. You see, like one of the people I kept saying that Liberians are corrupt. But look, the mindset, that's the only thing, the only person would come, the leader that would come with the best mindset. Liberia is corrupt, Dennis. Anything somebody do for you, you send somebody to go buy something, the person come back, you don't want to give your change. You gotta ask for it. Sometimes you ask for your own change. Oh, I wanted to bring that change, but I will go get a little. And they got the money right on them there. You know, there's honesty in our society. So the people are growing up with it, the children are growing up with it. So as soon as they get government job, that feeling mentality go there. Nothing. I'll tell you something. About 3 weeks ago, I traveled to Uganda. I went to that place. I got my visa online and everything was kind of like messed up. They wanted letters from the person I'm going to. I said I'm going to the church. They wanted a letter from the church. I paid for the visa, everything. They just said pending. I went to the embassy. They told me, oh, we can't do anything. You have to just go there at the airport. And then they're going to let you in. You're going to something. I went to the airport in Uganda. Everything was smooth. I mean, to call long matter short, everything was smooth. I went in the post city in Kampala. Then I took some pictures. The people street. I mean, the street clean. The folk village, everything. You eat peanut, corn. You put that, you put that in your pocket until you get to a place to dispose it, or you put it in a plastic bag. That's how the people. But moreover, somebody gets there. They got the plastic right there. Nobody say anything. Nobody do anything. Nobody sweep it. It's bill up.
Thank you.
Make the place dirty. So our mindset, we need somebody like the guy said over there, somebody like Gerald Rowland to come over there and spit in that place. But our people, the society is corrupt. Before
I thought you were going to say me, then you said Gerald Rowland.
No, I mean,
I'm just kidding. But thank you. Let me take more callers.
Then I went 1 minute. I don't know whether it is the education, because our people, even from here, as a matter of fact, you stay here, you go to the bank, you stay online, you do everything, but as soon as you enter RIA, then you don't even want to stay on the line. You want to cut short the line. They say no parking here. You want to let to bring a car there because you're there. You come from America, for them to put your load, your load. So, I mean, the mindset. I don't know. I can wonder.
Thank you, Camus.
I can wonder. Dennis, I mean, look, my father. That one thing I learned. I was born in a very poor family. My father was very poor. One thing my father used to say, I'm poor, but I don't owe anybody, and I can't lie, I can't steal. And my father said, you ugly. Even if you're talking to Mohamed, he say, Mohamed, you ugly. And then you ask him, who are you talking to? Me? He said, oh yeah, what on your face? I can tell you. Yeah, you're ugly. And that was the kind of person he is. He taught us not to lie, not to steal.
Thank you, Camus.
You with me.
Thank you. Let me take the next caller. We got plenty of callers.
And education. Because our society, push our society, are uneducated. If people come over and say, Joe, we are the best party.
Thank you.
CDC is the best party. The other youth or military wing is the
let me take Houston Brooks.
All right. Brother John, good afternoon. For me, it's good afternoon where I'm at. I'm happy to be on the show. And you, Mr. John, and all the panelists and Madam family that are called in have already answered this question many times over. So I'm just adding my 2 cents. And so here's my 2 cents. My 2 cents is true. Government is a reflection of society. The Bible in the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 18, says where there is no vision, the people perish. So, yes, government is the reflection of society, but if society is not experiencing the productive outcomes, the Bible places the blame at the feet of government, at the feet of leaders, not at the feet of society, because it is the leader's responsibility, it's the government. And contrary to my brother, Mr. Eastman, it's not about a savior thing. It's not an idealistic word. The government is made out of the best that society has to offer. So yes, government is a reflection of society. And if society is not experiencing the productive outcomes of government, the blame is not on society, it's on government, because government lacks the visionary leader to drive society in a productive direction. Now, my second part, before I close, you asked the question, how do we move forward? And now this is what I'm about to say that will make you and everybody on all the panelists question my intellectual soundness. I say there is no solution, or at best, the way forward is only intellectual. Everybody gave the intellectual hypothesis on how things are supposed to be. But productively on the ground, there is no tangible solution. And yes, why? I know on the panel, my brother, Mr. Sirleaf, and especially everybody, you have a little bit of study in organizational leadership. You study a course in organizational leadership. You learn that some organizations, and by extension, I would add some societies, just do not flourish. Some organizations, no matter what is put into place, there is always some unforeseen circumstance, there's always some unforeseen factor, some outlier that come into play that prevents that organization, and I'm speaking in our case, the Liberian society, from flourishing. So at every stage in our society, there will be something to come out that will prevent us from moving forward. Wow. Liberia, unfortunately, is just one of those countries that will never move forward. So since I am not a historian, like Madame Fambule, I cannot speak on the historic things that prevented us, that got us where we are today. I will speak on one that is contemporary. Just one. Please give me 30 seconds. One that is contemporary. Post-war nation building. Post-war nation building. Something that I'm a subject matter expert on is military science. In military science, there's a course called combat strategy. In combat strategy, there's a study called What Do You Do After the War is Won? Looking at Liberia, there are so many marks that we missed from the Ghanaian Peace Accord to this day. There were so many things that I cannot even bring up one because you kicked me off the phone. But the one that's holding Liberia back right now is because when we sign that peace accord in Ghana, moving forward, it's in the era of post-war nation building. We missed so many things that is going to just hold us back, perhaps not in our lifetime, but our children and our children to come, they will see some change in Liberia. But not while you and I are living, my brother. Thank you. That's all I got for the show. I will continue listening.
Yeah, please do. Thank you so much.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
let me take one more caller, and then we're gonna go back to our panelists. A wireless caller, 215 area code. Go ahead, you're live.
Good afternoon, Dennis, and good afternoon to the panelists. My name is Hassan. I think the problem, I think everybody on the panel agree that the system in Liberia is correct. And it's this monkey see, monkey do mentality. If a child grew up in Liberia, all he sees is the representative and senators live those kind of lifestyle, those are the same things they're going to emulate when they grow up. The reason why most of us in the West now that come to America, our mindset changes because we're being introduced to something new. And one of the callers said there's no politician that's not corrupt. I disagree. I think Alex Cummings, if anybody had a company here and they were switching resumes, they would if Alexander Cummings with his resume and all the other candidates' resumes, I think people here from this place would more likely hire him over everybody else just based on his track record. That's something that we all know of. And one of the things you touched on was the way to go forward. I don't think anybody I've really talked about the justice system reform. We can't have accountability. Everybody says accountability. We can't have accountability if we don't have trained prosecutors to go after these people, right? If we don't have police reform and stuff like that. Those are some of the things we can, and how do you call it? We can look at or people can talk about, because if we have a strong justice system and a strong police to go after people and prosecute people, a lot of people will start to deviate from those things, or will think twice before they even try to, how you call it.
Thank you.
So that's just my take on it. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Time is fast spent. So Percy and Ajume Cassell, please 1 minute each so that I can go back to my panelists. Let's start with Percy.
Well, why you gotta get caveat to no, Dennis, quickly, right? Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, quickly. Every problem that's happening in Liberia has been solved somewhere else. Every problem we have in Liberia today, somebody has solved it in another country or in another context. So there's a solution out there. Two, the problem with corruption in Liberia is deterrence. Everywhere, I mean, there's corrupt people in America, you know that, Dennis. The difference between Liberia and other places is the fact that there is deterrence here. You go in the American criminal justice system, you find former congressmen and different high-top level officials in there that have been corrupt, that have done something that contravened the law, and it's sitting in there today. And thirdly, I think Cole hit on that. Liberia, the administrative part of the country, is being ran on a 20th century model, which was meant for quick action between the central government to go. I mean, it was mostly, okay, we have a problem here, let's dispatch people there and go solve the problem. And that's the kind of model we have. That's the centralization of our country is what's killing it also. You need to devolve power to different parts of, we have to have different points of power in our country. You can't have everything sitting in Monrovia. Monrovia is not Liberia. You go to Liberia today, as soon as you leave Monrovia, you drive to the Hinton, and there's the place is still the thing since 1847, basically. Maybe with the exception of a few small rules passing here, people, one person building houses, but basically Liberia is still the same outside of Monrovia since 1847. We have to decentralize things. We have to empower people in the counties. The government in Liberia does not know what's going on in the localities. Even local leaders will know those things. They will know where to build hospitals. They will know how many people here and how many schools they need to build here. Central government does not do these things. It's the local people that do it. You have to empower them, but I can go.
Thank you. Ayume, one minute, please. Ayume Kilate Kasea. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for this program. It's really good. Thank you so well. Thank you, all the panelists. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, we have to know the importance of what black activity really is. We have to know what a country really represents and why we are members of that society. If we don't know the importance of it, we never want to make it better. And because we don't know the importance of it, we don't look for self-investment. That's why we always point to other people instead of looking at what is wrong with us and fixing it. And then we always look to someone to fix it. The problem that we have, yes, we are miseducated. But the whole world was not educated. So when we get interested in Liberia, we will want to know about Liberia. And when we get to know Liberia, we will get to love Liberia. But first, we have to find that interest in the land. And when we find that interest in the land, then we will start to fix it. But because we detach ourselves from the land, we got no obligation to fix it. We always want from her, and we never give to her. And now we have educated people in the country. But are there insightful, are there wise men? There's a lot of degrees in our country. graduate school, got degrees. Are we trying to educate for the next generation? Do we grow people for the society? Self-investment. One step. The urge to improve oneself collectively and individually. We will have those things. We will reserve those things. We will always look for that person that will come and say, my beautiful, let me say by you and I, no political leader, no political party, to save Nigeria.
Thank you.
Myself. Be interested in the land. May we better ourselves. And like one person should be the president, and like one person should be the senator, and like one person should be the representative. People will better ourselves in the house. We will hear in the house of lawmakers will do correctly. We will hear the president will do correctly. When the same inspection of people that inspection, now also like the party. Of the company. We will fix it in the house, so for the winner market will fix it upstairs.
Thank you.
Thank you, my people.
Thank you. Thank you. You heard our callers. Unfortunately, time is fast spent, so we will not be going into responding to our callers. At this time, we go straight into our Tabata session. Every week or every day, there is some Tabata going on in the country or somewhere in the world. Mr. Lawrence Zakbai, this is your first time. On Thursday, we have our Tabata session. Tabata in this our Southeastern language means foolishness, nonsense. So every day we start with our Tabata of the day or the Tabata of the week. This time we're going to start with Mr. Ahmed Salif. What's your Tabata of the week?
I'm still thinking about it. Oh, so many different things. Maybe you should make the round, and by the time you get to
let's go to call because Mr. Kuni would like to hear from call on the Tabata.
Yeah, call will give me the clue.
So y'all just want me to say Tabata. I think the whole Africa Summit fiasco is the greatest Tabata of the year, of the decade. You know, it's up there with the Berlin Conference and the partitioning of Africa. It is an absurd gesture and a blatant gesture of planned exploitation of African consumerism instead of African production. And I think, you know, the greatest part of the Tabata is that other African countries have citizens who are articulating this. Every African country that I'm connected to on social media has citizens that are sensitive. And only Liberia, I see 100% of everyone praise singing and thinking this is going to be wonderful for us, and that, you know, they're not trying to save us, you know. So that's the Tabata. People not being self-aware and understanding who their friends are and who's coming to exploit them.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif.
Okay, so Jefferson Koji. So it's not going. No, not today. I don't know. Is he here? Is he with his boss? I don't know. Okay, so not Jefferson Koji. That will be probably next week. Ahmed, what do you say? Is he here?
He's not. He's in Liberia. He gave a speech, I think, this week.
Oh my God, how did I miss it? Okay, so that will be next week. But something that happened, the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, I hope he's okay. Dennis, he was given he went to dedicate a major road. They completed a major road project. South Sudan is the newest country in Africa, by European definition, of course. So he went to, dedicate this project, and in front of the media, top military brass, everybody, dignitaries, ambassadors and stuff like that. So the president just, while the camera was rolling, so he wetted himself. Like, he just peed in his pants. I don't know if there's any way that I can say this. And so he looked down. The camera, it was right there. And some of his top brass look and in this amazement, embarrassment. I hope, I'm not trying to make fun of it. I hope this is not, if it's a medical condition, I'm sorry. But if it's a medical condition, then he needs to just find a way, like go to the hospital. And then the other thing, Dennis, is the bigger story to this is some African leaders right now are dying in the presidency, but they're still there. You just see their body, but they're still there. Omar Bongo, what's his name? Ali Bongo. Ali Bongo. He's dying. And then you have the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya, who's spending 8 months out of 12 in Switzerland in some hospital. And so I don't know what is this, Dennis.
That's how Iyadima was until
he died. So this is a Tabata. And look, I'm not trying to make fun of this, but I just link this to other African countries, other African leaders who are in similar situation, and they don't want to concede. They don't want to see power. They don't even have democracy in those countries. So it's just, it's something.
Thank you. Let's get this Tabata from Sam Waller. He said, my Tabata is FOL pretending today that a U.S. African summit isn't taking place this week in Washington, where for the first time in decades, United States has publicly embraced, rolled out the red carpet for Liberia, and has now invited President Weah back in March for a White House visit after asking for years while Liberia was being ignored. FOL now says nothing.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Salif. It comes back to you.
Yeah,
let me go first. Let Mr. Salif close.
Yeah, let's talk about good laws.
I think he's trying to formulate it better. All right, it did not happen today, but I think the greatest Tabata I'm thinking about is the prison swap of Victor Booth, a renowned merchant of death who brought so much death to the continent of Africa and even to the U.S. troop in exchange for a basketball player. I don't see anything that is more foolish than that.
Okay. Easton Brooks, no, Mr. Wait,
go for it.
Easton Brooks said, my Tabata of the week is sedition jumping up and down because we had took selfie with Biden. Why the MCC is giving money to other African countries?
Yes. So my Tabata actually has to do with that selfie there. So the selfie is not a diplomatic photo. It's not. All the African heads of state have photo op. You took your turn. However, the arrangement, the protocol arrangement was whether you stood by the lectern side by side, they have photo ops, right? But of all the photos that are circulating with the president's interaction at the White House, that particular photo, that selfie, it just made me to cringe a little bit. I'm like, okay. It's just like, me and the dude like, oh man, let's take a selfie. Let me, I got my camera right here. Kind of like, and how the Americans would talk about that, and they would talk about us, when these Africans leave, even before they leave, it's been discussed. As a Liberian, I just felt a little embarrassed by that, to be honest with you. And, I know my CDC friends were not like this, but it just didn't seem dignified to me. Nothing wrong with selfies, don't get me wrong. But when you are the president of the republic, you visit with another president, another country, in a summit with other heads of state. I don't know if everybody was taking selfie, but it just made it a little bit too informal for me.
Thank you. Evans Morris, my Tabata is how nice Biden is being to Weah after sanctioning people in his government. Ayume Cassell, my Tabata is U.S. thinking that the Africa-U.S. summit is in our interest, focus on Liberia. My Tabata, I had my Tabata, which was the speech by Zanzan Kawa, how you call it, which I believe, but I'm going to leave it. This photo beat it for me when I saw it. And I don't know how other people thought about it, but I have not seen any serious summit where the people are there watching football. So it's like, I'm like, is this man really joking with us?
Right.
For me personally, when I saw that, watching watching football because Africa is like, the way it came to me is like, okay, these people are not serious. Let's just have fun. So,
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the Tabata
Exactly. These
of the
guys
week.
aren't serious. You
they don't
know,
have anything to offer.
right. They
Let's
don't
be
have any.
frank.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Dennis,
if they're dumb
Dennis,
enough to go to a summit where they're being served at the table and not have given a seat at the table, then what else? Why can't they watch football while they're there too?
Yeah.
right. And Dennis, the people know that the president has not been back home for 2 months, about 2 months. So they know that. They
Yeah,
understand
it
that.
is 2 months now. It's
Right.
2 months almost.
Yeah. So they know that.
So they got to watch football with him since it's
Right.
all right. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming. But we have few more announcements to make here. But let me get your closing. We're talking about a reflection, a government being a reflection of the society. How we get here and where we go from here. Let me get your closing. Our first time guest will be the last. He will have the last word. So let me start with Mr. Sharif.
Yeah, truly, it's a true statement. Ever since Professor Dunn told us, I've always, I've always had that, in my head, and every analytics that I run in my head, leads me to the same conclusion, and so it behooves us as a people. I will hope, unlike the caller who cast a doubt, I will hope that this happens in our lifetime, and certainly and continue to flourish. Leaders are trendsetters. I've usually mentioned the example of President Tolbert, who was a leader, believe it or not. Many people would discount that now, but he was a leader in education. Liberia. President Tolbert went around the country to encourage people who weren't sending their kids to school to begin to send their kids to school. He told them the value of education. He told them that I have made education free. He told them that, I've introduced school feeding programs. There were just schools that were being fed. There were school feeding programs all across the country. So as a result of that, you have people like my parents and other parents who start sending their kids to school because, our people were not, were somewhat less interested in Western education. And so leaders can set examples. So look at Samuel Doe. Doe, one of his contributions was in the area of sports, right? He played soccer with, everywhere he went, he played soccer, and he was the national, how do you call it? He was the national leader of soccer. And so during that short period of time, between probably 1982 to 1987, perhaps in 1988, you saw that, the growth of soccer in Liberia, out of which came people like George Weah, out of which came James Deba and Boyd Child and all these other guys that came up, Kevin Sebwe and other guys that came up around that time period. Why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because leaders can set a trend. Leaders are trendsetters. So if you see a leader who's incorruptible, I don't know if we're going to see an incorruptible leader right now, but I'm hoping that we see a leader who can at least minimize corruption to a degree. Now, lastly, what I'm going to say is that I work in the public sector, and one of the things that, Dennis, people everywhere are tempted to do bad things, but there are consequences. And because there are consequences, so people are very careful on what to do because there are heavy penalties. There are consequences. We undergo that. We undergo these different trainings and different things. So how to behave. And if you don't behave, you're going to get the consequences. One of the callers said there are the jail houses in the United States. There are senators, there were representatives, people who were governors are sitting in jail houses all across the United States. You don't see that in Liberia. So that is a problem.
Thank you. Join us tomorrow for the Hour of Politics. That's exclusive. Mr. Musa Hassan Bilete, the chairman of the CPP, will sit down with the political bulldog, Anthony Sie, to talk about some CPP politics, including the We Tire Suffering campaign. That's tomorrow, coming up. On Saturday, the History Channel is going to continue with presenter Call Famule. We're going to be discussing President Hillary R.W. Johnson. Please tune in for the History Channel. This is every other Saturday at 7. Friday night debate is back, is coming. Friday night debate, we're going to be debating these issues from political landscape. We have our independent and our partisan panelists. President Weah's speech at the summit will be one of those we're going to be discussing. The town hall that was hosted by CDC, they said CDC said no, that's not them. LBDI financial troubles, the scandal and possible collapse of the bank, and we are tired suffering rally. All that coming up on Friday night debate. On Sunday, hello, Pastor. Reverend Dr. Chandler G. Fremont, the presenter, will be discussing God's involvement into our affairs. Did God create us because of quid pro quo? I create you, you worship me. We're going to be talking about that. Where is God when it comes to politics and governance, espionage and warfare, sports and entertainment? Does God take sides? Join us Sunday. Hello, Pastor, and we'll be discussing all these questions. Then Wednesday, Minister Ivan P. will be launching his new EP very soon. I'm going to sit down with him Wednesday for an exclusive. You don't want to miss that. Carl, let me get your closing comments on the topic we discussed. A government, a reflection of society.
Yes, the government is absolutely a reflection of the society. As below, so above. As above, so below. And we have to understand that these are very desperate times. And desperate times call for desperate measures. We cannot be doing things that we do during times of normalcy when the country is collapsing over the weight of a giant dysfunctional government. People are in the country working to pay taxes to feed this incredible parasite of a government that we have that does not return what it consumes from the citizens and from the country. And this is a desperate situation. This is not what the Constitution was designed for. This is not the purpose of the state. We have a dysfunctional legislature that does not hold the executive accountable. We have a Supreme Court that has been accused by foreign nations of bribery. You know, it is one of the most chaotic periods in Liberian history right now. I mean, we've had presidents impeached, lynched, you know, and forced to resign for far less than what is happening right now. And it's because we are putting people into power that don't even have the capacity to understand their roles and responsibilities. This is a desperate time. When I say desperate measures, I mean we need the think tanks, the thinkers of the country, the Sharifs, the Jaz, the Lawrence, I cannot pronounce your last name, Zarfa. Those are the people we need to form a think tank, bring everyone to the table, and have a summit. Instead of worrying about this summit and coming to, you know, serve us at the table, we need to set our own table and think for ourselves. That's the way forward.
Thank you.
At least the first step. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Salif.
Thank you, Dennis. They say that a nation is as good as its people. The nation state is its people. The people are the nation state. So, and you know, part of the legal definition of a nation is to have a defined population, and you know, in order and be recognized by others to be able to have sovereignty, enjoy sovereignty. And so I say that to say that whatever we can do to invest in our human capital, I think that will help us to really begin to reflect, to have a government that, you know, because once the population, the mindset, and the capacity, because it's people that leads to what's known as state capability. State is not an animal that gets up and does things. It's the people that have state capability. Do they have the ability to form vision? Do they have the tactical abilities? Do they have, can they actually do stuff? They have the tactical agriculture extension people, the agri-science people, the business executives, media executives, civil society, the religious institutions, the family, all of these institutions and sectors in our country, all of them, it takes people to run them. So when you have a capable people, and I get in trouble when I say people problem, that's not to suggest that we don't have high quality people. We do. But if we're talking about state, the country, trying to fix the country and really address some of these complex, wicked problems that we have to begin to turn our human capital around so that our young people get the highest training they can get, the highest moral standards that can begin to be inculcated into all of us to change those behaviors. That in the US, you go to the bank, you stand in the line, you go to the pharmacy, you're in line. Soon you hit RI, you big shot, you don't even want to go through inspection. Your bags are, this is Mr. Sirleaf. Okay, let your bag and go. And then you allow it, and you're there, you allow it, knowing that's wrong. There's a man in Liberia, Dr. Lawrence Brokler runs this program, Changing Minds, Changing Attitude. I always used to listen to that. It's very well-spoken man. He's a religious person, a lawyer. He really talks about these things on the radio. But I don't know. I think one voice can go a long way, but it gets drowned out. So we need all sectors of our society that I've named to begin to really be setting the trends that Mr. Sheriff and others have talked about. Because you set the trend, and then you apply technical solutions. See, in development, there's a scholar that talks about the anti-politics machine, where he questions why all these development agencies and governments come and only throw technical solution. They think that you can fix a country and modernize or move a nation only through technical solutions. When the mindset, the culture, the way the people see things are not in sync with your technical solution, that doesn't work. So we need both. We need the inspiration, we need the technical and the people capacity to be able to move the country forward, because our government is a reflection of us.
Mr. Zakba, you get the last word.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be invited here. Thank you very much, everybody. I think the underlying words that everybody touched on here today is a changed mindset. Liberia is at a crossroad, and I want to address every Liberian listening to us right now. You are important. You are valuable. Do not let anyone look down on you. Do not let any government look down on you. Hold yourself at a very high regard. Focus on working on yourself, even as we talk about the importance of a government, but focus on working on your own mindset, your own individual mindset. You can do better than you are doing. You can be better. You have the ability. You have the connections. Just look around. No matter where you are, look around. Find somebody who's going in the right direction and hang onto them. Do not join the masses who are going nowhere. You can do better. Work on your own personal life. And in the meantime, work on your mindset. That's very important. So I think we have to go back to values, in my own opinion. Since we're talking about mindset, we need to come and define, what do we value as a Liberians? What are our values? What do we hold up for other people to see? What do we consider to be the first and most important thing in our lives, in our country? We need to go back to our values. We need to work on our mindset. We need a desire to be better. We need to have the capacity to be ashamed, to look at other people and say, if somebody else can do this, we can do that. We need to change our direction, and we need to be dedicated on moving in the right direction. Thank you very much again. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zakwa. Thank you, Mr. Sharif, Mr. Salif, and Mrs. Famule. Thank you for always taking up your time to join us here for Tough Talking. I want to thank our viewers who are watching now and those who will watch later. Always keep it here, focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, we end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Good night and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.